All right, well, how's everybody doing this beautiful weekend? I just want to show you changing out the brake levers and the shift lever on a Lifan KPR 200. This is the US edition. Now, if you go on Amazon, they do have the KPMoto-Club, the official brake lever, clutch levers. Are they any different than some of the, knockoff ones or just the ones that are fabricated out of aluminum? Probably not, but what's cool about these that I really did like was the fact that they are, look at that, KPMoto-Club on there, and it's got the little icon that usually goes with the King Power Racing, which is KPR. So these are adjustable. These do look nicer, and they do have a little bit more protection in case it leans against something. Now, some people say it doesn't make much of a difference if something goes like that, but you break them like that, they could pop up. I guess could save it from potential light fall or something. So what did I do to, or what am I about to do to change these out? I did a little bit of leg work beforehand, only because I wanted to make sure that nothing was messed up and I didn't run into any problems, and to make sure that I cover all the steps for anybody at home who wants to do this. Fairly easy. What does it take? It takes two 10mm sockets, especially on the brake side. You just need one for the top and one for the bottom, because it does have a nut on top and a nut on bottom, and that is a little somewhat of a lock nut. I did notice one thing about this. There was very little grease on the brake side and no grease on the clutch side, but I'll get to that in a minute. So, like I said, I did take off this nut first on the bottom, holding a little back pressure up here. Then I backed that bolt out. Once you take the bolt out, the brake side is fairly easy. I mean, I got that hand tight right now. And so it just pops off. Now, comparing that to the, see that, KPMoto, it's a little bit different. It's going to have a little bit different angle to it, but it's supposed to. Set that aside. And simply put, it'll go back in. Now, notice again, there's no grease on it. So I'm going to put a little bit of grease just to make sure that I have ample amounts, because as I mentioned before, that may be too much. Could use a little bit on the other side. Go ahead and push the bolt through. So I'll put some grease on it. We'll actually put a little bit on the top right here, because there was very little on the bolt. Oh, dadgum. Overkill. Boy, that's a fail right there, isn't it, guys? Alright, so go ahead and line that up. Start to thread it back in. Alright, so with that on there, I have to clean up some of that extra grease. Don't pay attention to my hands, by the way. I was pushing a shovel, and these soft hands, man, I haven't done that in years. That's a young man's game. So this will get tightened back down, so I'll just thread that back through. I'll put this nut on the back bottom side, and then later on I'll do a review on how these are. So you can hear the actuators clicking nicely on there. Everything's good. I don't want to spend too much time sitting there tightening everything down. Now the clutch is the second part, and the thing about the clutch is it's just as easy minus one step. Now if you look at the bottom down here, I had to go in, and of course on your cable for your clutch, you have to gently, and I mean gently, so that you don't fray any wires or tear anything up, you pull the clutch in and start to let it go with your hand back here with just a little bit of pressure. Then you take and you move this out of the way, and you take your needle nose pliers and you just clamp them on the back side of that wire ever so gently to hold it. Now you don't crush down on it, you don't pull on it, because you don't want to fray any of that cabling. Now you can do it, I mean, with minimal pressure, and all I did was hold it let go of the clutch with the other hand and kind of slide it back out. Now putting it back on, that may be the hard part, but you just got to make sure that you give this a little bit of even pressure like I'm doing there with that finger, and then you take those needle nose pliers and do not crush the cable. You got to do it ever so gently. So let's come over to this side and let's take a look at the clutch lever. Alright, so the clutch lever is very similar to doing the brake. The only difference, of course, is going to be having to put the cable on that side. And do make sure that you apply ample amount of grease to this side, because there was not any. So I'm going to take that one off. Again, I've already done all the legwork. This one had a little bit different lock nut on the back side. See, but again, it's a 10 millimeter. Now the top is a flathead, and this is where you're going to want to get one of your larger flathead screwdrivers, because as you can see, that's marred up. A little bit of that I take responsibility for, but it came that way from the factory. Don't know why. I guess they used a smaller screwdriver, but you want to make sure that you push down with even pressure, because if you don't, you're going to end up stripping it or making it ugly. Now if you do, you can go back and ever so gently sand it smooth again, but it'll have that silver sheen to it because you have taken off a little bit of the weather protection coating. So this one, I noticed when I got it out, had no grease. So that makes me wonder, which I'm going to do anyway, I guess, go through and grease fittings on this bike. See there? That's may have a little bit of a sheen to it, but that is pretty dry. Otherwise, I'll take that out of the way. Now the clutch lever, remember, had to undo the cable down there on the motor. Slide this back. You don't want to tear it. Now I can gently pull this out, flip it over, turn, and push out. Now you'll notice, and I want to keep it in the same position it was in. I'm going to hold that right there, so that I can emulate the same twist on the cable. You don't want to let go and let the cable start twisting. There we go. And look, I push in, I'll flip back over and slide in. So it's pretty simple, it's pretty straightforward. What I'm gonna have to do on the back side is go through and make sure I've lubed everything up after this video. I mean, you can see that. Boy, that, see, I mean, you don't have to over grease it. It doesn't have to be sloppy. The other side I did sloppy. You know, I'm doing this, not paying attention, trying to do it quickly. Never do that. Rule 1. I guess, do as I say, not as I do. Anyway. Alright, so I'm going to go back and put grease in my fitting here, and I'm going to put it on the top just a little bit, ever so slightly, so it can make sure there's less friction. That doesn't really hurt anything. You'd never see it anyway. But once that's done, go through, grease up this one, place it back in. Now when I said this reminds me of old dirt bikes, it really does. This setup is kind of what it was. If you ever worked on a late 80s, early 90s Honda dirt bike, I mean, a lot of this was kind of on those smaller dirt bikes we had when we were young. Same kind of setup with the basic clutch cable. I think the brakes nowadays are a little bit fancier than they were in the past. But anyway, so once I get all this set up, I do have my exhaust, and I'm going to install the exhaust. You'll get to hear that, see that, it'll be cool. So this is a review for the KPmoto. This is the clutch lever, and this is the brake lever on the other side. They are specifically for the KPR 200. This is the American edition, which, you know, if you're in another country, I don't really see too much of a difference aside from maybe the displacement of the motor. So far, so good on it. It's gotten inspected, received the paperwork for the title. I'm going to take that to the county whenever we open back up after quarantine. They're not open on a weekend anyway, so it doesn't matter. But what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to make sure that everything's lubed up on this bike, because from what I've seen, it was lacking in a little bit of oil. You don't want too much grease. I said oil, I meant grease. You don't want too much grease on everything because you don't want it sloppy. But hey, here's the thing about it. In a lot of instances, A little too much grease is better than none at all, or too little. I did order a new chain for this one. Now it's going to be a really nice chain, and I'll show you that because that's going to be cool. Also put it on got a little cheap stand at Harbor Freight, which to work on it, this stand right here has been amazing. I'll flip around to this side. Come. All right. And so this stand, I think with the coupon was like $35, something like that. Anyway, so it's been perfect to work on it because I don't have to worry about tipping it over, and all I have to do is put it on there and it's level and even and steady. They also say that if you're going to store a bike, to keep it on a stand like that so that the tires don't develop flat spots. Don't have one for the front, so you'd get a flat spot there, but I don't plan on letting it just sit. Maybe when it's really rainy, too cold. But no, whatever. I digress again. So, hey, you know what? These are cool levers. Got them off Amazon. They'll look good on the bike. They actually match the red really nicely, which would go well with the gray one too, because they have that gray bike. They also have that white bike. I mean, it'd go good with any of them except for maybe that yellow one. I don't know that would match it so well. So, cool levers. Get a little bit of adjustment with them. That's the trade-off, which is cool too. So, hey, thanks guys. And when I do some updates to this bike, like the exhaust and the chain, I'll try to put that on there. Again, I'm not a mechanic. Have worked on motorcycles, vehicles, and of course a Jeep, because if you own a Jeep you have to work on it. So have a fantastic day everybody, and you know what, don't go buying motorcycles off the internet because it gets expensive.